It's 7 o'clock. This is Sky News Breakfast. These are our top stories this morning. Freedom for care home residents as the government announces they'll be able to leave their homes for outdoor visits without needing to self-isolate on return.
The first thing I would like to do is to go and see my wife's grave.
The Department for Transport misses a deadline to publish its traffic lights list for international travel, but reports suggest holidays will be given the green light from the 17th of May. We'll be live at a vaccination centre in Delhi as India's daily coronavirus cases rise by a record 400,000. As the clock ticks down to polling day, we look at what's at stake in Scotland's parliamentary elections and what it could mean for the UK. Rave return. 3,000 clubbers hit the dance floor in Liverpool in a pilot event with no masks and no social distancing. In sport, Premier League clubs, players and managers unite behind a social media boycott to tackle online abuse and discrimination.
And as we leave the fourth driest April on record, will there be any wet weather for the start of May? I'll have the details for you later in the programme.
And at 7:45, we'll take a look at the newspapers with Afi Adam and Thomas Copeland. Good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Thank you for joining us. The government has announced that from Tuesday, care home residents will be allowed to leave their homes for low-risk visits without having to self-isolate. Currently, residents have to quarantine for 14 days on return. But the Health Department is loosening restrictions after a charity threatened legal action. People will now be permitted to go for a walk, visit a loved one's garden and even go for a meal outside. As Milena Veselinovic reports, the new freedoms can't come too soon for some residents.
Jim Kelly hasn't left his care home in months because rules meant that if he went out even just for a walk, he would have had to quarantine in his room for 2 weeks afterwards. But from Tuesday, that regulation will be scrapped, and Jim already knows where he'll go first.
I would think the first thing I would like to do is to go and see my wife's grave. She passed away in September, and I felt like a prisoner ever since. I'd just like to go to the grave and pay my respects. And then maybe go and have a meal with the family. That would be a bonus.
His daughter says the rule change means her father can once again feel like he's part of the family.
I think the flexibility to be able to do a little, go for a coffee, you know, take a flask of coffee and go for a little walk, or if he's feeling down, you can just, you know, he can ring us and say, do you fancy a walk? Can I come over for coffee in your garden? Because luckily Dad can still drive.
The government says it can now drop the quarantine rule because COVID cases continue to fall. It's one more step to getting back to normal, says Care Minister Helen Whately. But outings must be limited to outdoor spaces and private gardens, and residents can't meet in groups. Some, though, feel that the quarantine rule should have never been in place.
The requirement for residents to self-isolate for 2 weeks after a single outing meant that really most of them haven't been out of the care home in months, and that, campaigners say, didn't make any sense because care home staff would still come in and out every day without restrictions.
A rights group says the regulation deprived people in care of their agency and autonomy.
What this last year of the pandemic has brutally exposed is that there is a whole section of society, those people, old and young, who live in care homes, who have been deprived of their liberties, who are treated as if they are different and less than the rest of us. And we just need to keep an eye on that.
For Jim and many like him, this newly restored freedom means life will have more joy once again. Milena Veselinovic, Sky News.
The government will miss an initial 1st of May deadline for publishing grades of countries under a new traffic light system for international travel. The Department for Transport now says the list will be made public in early May. pressure is mounting from the travel industry to provide clarity. Well, Emma Birchley joins me now from the newsroom. And Emma, what are the repercussions of this missed deadline?
Well, I think mainly an enormous amount of uncertainty. Just 16 days to go until, in theory, people in England at least can head off on holiday again. But we know there'll be this traffic light system, but we don't know what country will be on which list. So green, amber, red. Now, with all three lists, you'll have to take a test before you head back to the UK. But if it's a country on the green list, and there aren't expected to be many of those, then you'll have to have a test on day 2, but otherwise free to go about your business. Amber list people will need to self-isolate for 10 days and have 2 tests on days 2 and 8. And for red list countries, people will have to quarantine, as they have been now, in a hotel. So travellers, travel industry, enormously up in the air, lacking in clarity. And in fact, Jet2 made a decision that they wouldn't operate any holidays or flights until the end of June because of that uncertainty. There is some good news, though. So there are no guarantees that May the 17th would be the date. It was part of the government's roadmap. But things are looking good. There were 4 tests that had to be met. So was the vaccination programme on track? Yes. Low infection rates, low death rates, and also low risk from variants of concern. Things all looking positive there. So hopefully travel will go ahead. But what's needed now are some answers so people can make plans.
Emma, thank you. Let's take a look now at the latest COVID figures. In the most recent 24-hour period, 2,381 new cases of coronavirus were reported. Another 15 people have died, which means the total number of deaths is now 127,517. Another 122,039 people have received their first vaccination, while 488,914 got their second, meaning 48.7 million jabs have now been given out across the UK. That's 65% of the population. Well, the crisis in India continues to escalate. It's been another record day with almost 402,000 new cases. That takes the total number of COVID-19 cases there to more than 19.1 million, with 211,853 deaths. Experts argue the real totals could be far greater. From today, India will attempt to step up its faltering vaccination drive by calling for adults 18 and older to get a jab. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, is in Delhi for us this morning at a vaccination centre, I believe. All steam ahead with the vaccination programme, it seems, Alice.
I'm afraid it's very bad news for anyone who wants to try and get a vaccination in Delhi or indeed throughout the country. It is not going well at all. Most hospitals in the Indian capital do not have enough stocks of vaccines and are having to delay the actual rollout. Today they were trying to extend it and had said that they wanted to have 18 years and older to come and get vaccinated as a way of trying to stop this huge spike in the number of cases. They have set global record highs in the number of coronavirus cases for the last 10 days and another record again today. But most of the hospitals, not just in Delhi, but throughout the country, have said they don't have the stocks. They're trying to put people off. They're trying to tell people don't come and queue up. This is one of the rare vaccination centres which has got a small stock. They've asked people to book appointments on the app. It's a fraction, an absolutely tiny fraction. They will only be able to give about 600, 1,200 vaccinations today in a city itself, which is made up of 17 million people. Now, a lot of people are asking how, why has a country which is the world's biggest manufacturer in vaccines not have enough stock to vaccinate its entire population? It has been shipping out since January 66 million doses to countries, something like 60 countries around the world. On the day that it hit global record highs in coronavirus cases was April the 22nd. That was the day that it shipped out even more to Paraguay. It's managed to ship out to Bhutan, for instance, which has totally vaccinated 93% of its population within 16 days. And yet, this country has not got its own. A lot of the residents and the citizens of India are asking, how has this happened? Was there too much of a drive to perhaps make money on the vaccines and not inoculate its own citizens? The scientists have been saying, they warned about this several months back, and right now the people of India have been told they might have to wait another 3 weeks to get inoculated. That's less than, at the moment, less than 2% of the population here are fully inoculated. So a pretty dire, more grim news from India.
So, Alex, no suggestion as to when they might be able to continue the vaccination programme normally, when they will have the stock?
I mean, it's a real race against time, because in trying to, there's no way, even with everyone shutting their borders now, the Americans are cutting off flights within the next few days. A number of other countries are considering cutting off flights. That is not going to work for India. They need to inoculate their citizens, and they're talking about maybe 10, 15 days' time, where right now they are still so overwhelmed with the number of people sick and dying in their hospitals still cannot cope. They're still putting out SOS distress calls, desperately asking for oxygen because they cannot cope with the number of people who need it. There are no hospital beds, there's no medicines, there's no remdesivir, one of the key medicines that's been used to try and combat the effects of coronavirus. It's a terribly grim situation, and today yet another knock-on effect of not having enough vaccines. It's really not going at all well for India. And we saw the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he put out on his Twitter feed a couple of hours ago, turning up to a Sikh temple to pray. Many commentators and analysts are viewing that as an attempt to try and switch attention away from a terribly, terribly grim situation inside the country towards other issues and focus much more on him praying rather than what he's doing to try and correct all of this mismanagement and try and turn the situation round.
Alex, thank you. Hope to be back to you later on in the morning. Thank you. Time now for a look at the morning's other main stories. And Game of Thrones actress Esme Bianco has sued the singer Marilyn Manson, alleging sexual assault and battery. The lawsuit claims he coerced the British actress with drugs, force and threats of force. More than a dozen other women have made similar allegations against the singer, who has since been dropped by his record label. The artist rejects all allegations of abuse against him, calling them horrible distortions of reality. A campaign is being launched to create a memorial inside St Paul's Cathedral for those who died from COVID-19. It's hoped the memorial would provide a reflective space for visitors and families to remember loved ones who will be open, and it will be open to those of all faiths. Disneyland in California has reopened for the first time in more than a year, as it was revealed more than 100 million Americans have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Disney fans who visited cheered and screamed through face masks as the park reopened to 25% capacity.
We're just excited to see the cast members back at work, excited to see things up and running again. We missed it. We missed it a lot.
I was coming 2 or 3 times a week, maybe up 5 times a week. So not being able to come to the park was really rough. It was hard.
This is my happy place. I mean, Disney is great.
So yeah, we're excited to be at Disneyland. Woo!
Returning now to our top story, and care home residents will be able to leave their homes for outdoor visits without needing to self-isolate on return. From Tuesday, they can spend time outside, sit in private gardens and see friends and family in a socially distanced fashion. Well, joining me now is the chair of the independent care group, Mike Padgeam. Good morning to you. What do you understand this to mean in practical terms? How will it work as far as you know?
Well, I think it's a victory for common sense. I'm very pleased to see it happening so that residents can enjoy some of the freedoms that the rest of us can now as lockdown eases. So I think it will work well. I'd like to see it go further in due course. But we have to take each step cautiously, don't we? So it's good news, and I congratulate John's campaign for the work they've done to bring pressure on government to make this happen quicker than it would have happened otherwise.
What changes will it mean for staff, though, the management of it and the executing of it?
Well, I think I would have liked a little bit more notice from the government, because I think that we've got to make sure that we've got enough staff who will accompany clients and residents when they go out, but also the designated visitors. If there isn't a member of staff to go with them, they should be ready, available. What the challenge, of course, is putting all those arrangements into place quickly enough, because Tuesday's not far away. But we're really pleased that we can do it. So I thank the government for it, and John's campaign, as I said earlier.
And what type of preparations will you have to put in place now? As you say, that there hasn't been much notice to be ready on time.
No, well, I think I just asked the public and residents in care homes have been very, very patient. I would just ask them for a little bit more patience whilst we put plans into action, because we obviously can't take everyone out in one go. We've got to do it and stage it by appointment, probably. Just ask people to bear with us so that we can put all those arrangements into place. So, yes, it won't be easy, but I'm really pleased we can do it. And hopefully with some good weather coming up, residents will enjoy the freedom the same as the rest of the country, because they do deserve it. Some people have not been outside for well over a year, so it's great news. I would like to see it go further as soon as it's safe to do so as well.
And how would you like to see it go further? In what way?
Well, I'd like to be able to see if people have had the vaccination. I'd like to be able to see people actually, be able to go to inside their relatives' homes if necessary. That's a little bit further down the line, of course. We've got to make sure that there's trust there at the moment, that everyone abides by the rules when people do go out, because there is a lot of trust got to be put in place by people to make sure that that they're not mixing indoors and not mixing with lots of other people. But it is a step in the right direction. We just got to keep the pressure on to make sure that as the rest of the country unlocks, that residents in care homes can have as much freedom as everyone else, whilst of course protecting them, because it's been a very difficult time for care homes over the last 12 months.
And how will you decide which residents are eligible to go outside, venture outside for visits? I mean, that presumably they'll be queuing up to be the first in line, but not everyone can use this facility in the first instance.
No, I think, without getting too boring about things, each client will have a risk assessment to show what's best for them. But yes, you're quite right. There will probably be a queue of people. That's why we'd have liked a little bit more notice. But hey-ho, care staff have done a fantastic job. We will do the best we can in the short space of time we've got. How's it going to be? Well, I guess first come, first served. We want to make sure those people whose mental health perhaps will do with an extra boost perhaps will be first in line. But it's going to be very difficult to choose and to make sure everyone's happy. But we'll give everyone a fair crack of the whip and do as much as we possibly can. But as I said earlier, we just ask for a little bit more patience while we put those plans into place.
You've mentioned a couple of times that it seems to have been sort of a last-minute thought by the government, and you would have liked more guidance. What would have informed you further to allow you to plan and to have all the right systems in place?
Well, perhaps if we'd had a week. It's always difficult, and I only found out myself late yesterday evening. I remember Easter bank holiday, we got notice about visitors in care homes, so it always seems to come out late one evening on a bank holiday when perhaps staffing is not at its highest. I would have liked perhaps a week's notice so we could put the schedules in place and give people what they need quickly. But we are where we are. We will make the best of it and give people the freedom they need. I was just pointing out that actually the government, needs to think sometimes when it makes these announcements to give us a bit more notice.
Mike Padgeam, thanks very much. Love your optimism. Good luck for Tuesday.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at the weather for you now with Naz. And should we be optimistic about the weather?
Yes, actually, gardeners should be optimistic because there's finally some significant rain coming for this bank holiday weekend.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. So we leave behind the fourth driest April on record, although it was a rather wet end to it with lots of April showers. And we start off at the beginning of May with showers around as well. For the end of the bank holiday weekend, there will be some significant rainfall. But to begin with this morning, lots of sunshine, largely dry. Much like previous morning, it's a chilly start with a frost in places. There are some coastal showers, some showers over central and southwestern parts of Scotland too. Then into this afternoon, cloud bubbles up and the showers become more frequent. There will be slow moving as the winds are light in some spots. There could be heavy and thundery with the risk of hail, some wintry over the high ground of the north, and it's disappointingly cool for the time of year. Tonight the showers fade away, chilly and frosty again, sunshine and showers again tomorrow, wet and windy on Bank Holiday Monday.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, if you've ever wondered who holds the world record for the longest golf drive to ever land in a moving car, as I have often, here is your answer.
Money fall! Money fall!
It's golf professional Marcus Armitage who's broken a 9-year-old record by driving the ball 303 yards at Elvington Airfield in Yorkshire. The ball landed in a convertible car driven by Paul O'Neill that was travelling at more than 70 miles per hour. It wasn't the duo's first attempt. Previous efforts had resulted in a smashed windshield. So when they finally did it, you can understand why they celebrated so wildly. The big question is, why, Jackie?
I don't know, Gillian. Why are you asking me? I've tried to watch things like Top Gear before. I don't get it. Do you think it's a boy thing?
Possibly.
Oh, hooray for those golfers. I'm so glad they achieved
Unimpressed.
Yeah. Off the field rivalries are put aside as football unites behind a social media boycott to tackle online hate and discrimination this weekend. Plus, why a coin toss proposal left a furious Derek Chisora threatening to abandon tonight's heavyweight fight against Joseph Parker. And it's lights out in Lille as the England women's rugby team secure victory over France in the strangest of circumstances.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. If there is a bigger explosion, this area would be in the danger zone.
These traffic jams snake for hours up and down this hillside. It means precious aid can't access those in need.
You can see the depth of the water. If you have a look in front of us, there are people wading through it.
I think experiencing the 2 million person march in Hong Kong, that was a moment.
I don't like the Chinese government. It's cruel.
It was real people power in action.
Police have been firing tear gas and rubber bullets.
See fires all around us here, and just one of them is the size of around 31,000 football pitches.
Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Bangkok.
risers.
As we examine the story beyond the headline.
For the knowledge seekers.
Welcome to Divided States.
For the straight talkers. The curious and the ones who want to be entertained.
Backstage, Sky News' entertainment podcast.
For wherever you are.
Welcome to Sophie Ridge on Sunday podcast.
For the ones who want to know more.
Welcome to the All Out Politics podcast.
For the listeners.
From Sky News Storycast.
Sky News Podcasts. Listen and subscribe for free.
Jackie is back with us to take us through all of the sport. What have you got?
I thought you were going to tell them what we were talking about in the break. It was the wee donkey, but it has not made it into my bulletin, let me tell you now.
You'll have to explain that another time.
I don't think I do have to explain it. Lights out across social media this weekend for footballers, and actual lights out in the women's rugby. Let's have a look.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality, committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
Well, the best place it feels like to start is the Spurs game and your performance and the result in general. How much did the club need that?
To get the revenge from the previous game that we had against them, because we still had the inside. Everyone had the inside, you know, losing like that at home. And just for the point as well, with the result that happened in the weekend, that was good for us. It was very important.
There was a really nice moment after the game that the cameras picked up, you and Ollie having a little chat. It looked like he was complimenting you on a part of your game. What's your relationship like with Ollie at the moment?
Well, he wasn't complimenting me. He was telling me that I should have scored. But no, obviously we have a very good relation. He understands me. He put me on the pitch. He trusts me to play or in the middle or on the left, and that's all the player needs.
There was a really interesting, what we'd call like a war of words between Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Jose Mourinho before the game and after the game, and it was amusing for us to watch. What did you guys make of it as players?
I don't know what happened. I'm sure Mourinho put something or said something that would the people speak. That's what he does. And we got the result that we wanted. Just Oli knows it, and we enjoyed that. We enjoyed that moment.
What do you think the differences are between Jose Mourinho's style of management and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's style of management?
What I have now with Oli is different because he wouldn't go against the players. Maybe he doesn't put them, or it's not like you put them on the side and they don't exist anymore. And I think that's the difference between Mourinho and Ole. Because once I had a great relationship with Mourinho, everybody see that, and the next day you don't know what happened. And that's the strange thing that I had with Mourinho. And I cannot explain to you because even me, I don't know.
Tell us about the role that you play, because when you were bought by Manchester United, it was a very box-to-box midfielder kind of role. You've changed so much, and at the weekend we saw you play far right and the front three. What do you prefer?
I like to do, obviously, attacking. I like to be in the box. I like to be decisive for my team. If I can do both, I will do it. I like to defend as well, to recover ball and get to the box. I just like to be free and play my football.
For you to perform at your best, do you feel that you need a consistent role, or are you happy to float around and do whatever it is that Ollie wants you to do?
I think for every player, you know, you always you need to play when you feel comfortable, when you're doing well there, and you carry on, you keep doing it. I think it will be harder, it will be more difficult for someone to be consistent and play well when you change a lot. The manager tells me to be deeper, I will be deeper, I will give my best there. And if I have to be a bit higher in the pocket, I will do the same and be there, try to be in front as well, help the team as much as I can.
I'm in.
I'm in. I'm in.
We're all in to kick it out.
Partnering to end racism in sport.
Brian Swanson and Carve Solical on set with me to discuss if the Super League is indeed dead, and if not, what's going to happen next. And we'll have more on the discussion about whether fans' ownership is a model for the future of English football. But next, we're going to hear from the England captain Harry Kane, who has praised fans for protesting against the Super League. Supporters turned up outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium before the game in the Premier League against Southampton on Wednesday to voice their objections to the proposals, as well as Chairman Daniel Levy and owners Enoch.
I was surprised, I'll be totally honest.
Committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Coming up, with the local elections looming, we head to Scotland to see what's at stake when the country goes to the polls. Welcome back. Liverpool has become the first city to host a near-normal concert in the UK, with 3,000 people attending a rave with no social distancing or masks. It's part of a pilot scheme to test how safe a return to live events would be. Katerina Vitozzi watched on in Liverpool, a report warning that her report does contain flashing images from the start.
Welcome back. This is the first UK club event since the pandemic began. It's loud. It's busy. And for some, after a year with nothing like this, it's really quite emotional.
My best friend started crying before she came, and it does feel a bit emotional. It feels a bit surreal.
It feels dead weird to be back around so many people, and like without masks, without social distance and stuff. Honestly, it feels amazing.
I've just been in the middle of the crowd now. It just felt like an actual club again. Like, I just loved it. It was great, honestly.
3
3,000 people have bought a ticket for today's event, and each one of them have had to have a negative COVID-19 test result within the past 24 hours. But once they've got that and they're inside, it's clubbing as it always has been. No mask, no social distancing, and even if you're someone that's not been clubbing in years, it still feels pretty special.
But this isn't just a party, it's a petri dish. Part of government trials to see if and how things like nightclubs can reopen safely as lockdown eases.
We're asking people to take another test at home for research purposes on the day of the event and 5 days afterwards. We're asking them questions. We're measuring the air. Are there any pockets of stale air? Measuring carbon dioxide levels. What is the safety blueprint, the public health safety net that we can build around these events to open them and keep them open?
Of course, this isn't just about finding ways to give people a good time. It's about restarting an events industry that stopped overnight more than 12 months ago.
I'm not an emotional person, and I certainly had a few teary eyes today. It's been very special. I'm just seeing the reaction of the people, the reaction of my staff, the reaction on social media from industry colleagues. It has been absolutely amazing to see.
They called this event the first dance. They hope it'll be the first of many. Katerina Potozzi, Sky News in Liverpool.
When Scottish voters go to the polls on Thursday, the outcome could have significant consequences for the UK. A total of 129 MSPs will be elected to Holyrood. Depending on the results, Boris Johnson could come under more pressure to grant a second independence referendum. Scotland's former First Minister Alex Salmond is standing as a candidate for his new party, Alba, in the northeast of Scotland, from where James Matthews reports.
Over the cliff edge, in the Aberdeenshire village of Pennon, they made the film Local Hero, an 80s classic in which a stubborn man of pensionable age upsets many around him by refusing to quietly disappear. In this election, fiction meets fact, starring Alex Salmond. Local hero or anti-hero? I headed for the red telephone box, the one made iconic by the movie. I made a call to Professor James Mitchell. What lies ahead for the local candidate?
It certainly will be around the margins. If there was to be a referendum and there was to be representation in the Parliament of Alba, then that will undermine the leadership of the Yes cause that the SNP would want.
Much of Scotland sees this election through the prism of the Constitution. Arguments for and against independence. We gauged the view on what else matters to people here. The answer is a lot, even if the light and shade of the independence debate is front and centre. These are fish fingers, just one of the products exported worldwide by Thistle Seafoods, a major employer in Peterhead, for whom the disruption of Brexit has shaped the view on independence.
If there was going to be Scottish independence, we know that there's going to be a hard border in Scotland now between Scotland and the rest of the UK. And I think for us, certainly Thistle Seafoods, I couldn't see us maintaining a manufacturing presence in Scotland on the back of that.
Around Aberdeen Harbour, supply vessels speak to the size and significance of the oil and gas industry, one that awaits a first election since the Scottish Government declared a climate emergency.
As we head towards net zero, there will still be demand for oil and gas. And so our argument is that we need to be optimising the indigenous industry that we have, the jobs, the skills and the experience, and that we shouldn't seek to shut that down prematurely.
And what of the generation that's only known an SNP government in Scotland, voting for the first time? We dropped by the dojo.
I want to see a safe approach to coming out of lockdown. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to work towards the climate change movement as well.
Recovery from the pandemic, obviously, and recovery from Brexit as well as the climate change and opportunities for young people.
No one doubts Nicola Sturgeon will win this election. The question is, by how much? Many believe the winning margin will be the measure of the case for IndyRef 2. There is more to this election than the Constitution. But for the independence debate, what happens next hinges on what happens next week. James Matthews, Sky News in Pennon, Aberdeenshire.
Looks beautiful there, doesn't it? What's the weather going to do to us here? Here's Ness.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Very good morning to you. It's a case of sunshine and showers once again for today. So after we've just left April, the fourth driest on record, but a wet end to it, we continue with the wet theme for the start of May. And in fact, it's going to turn very wet by the end of the bank holiday weekend. This morning, though, starts off fine, much like yesterday morning. We are going to see lots of sunshine out there this morning. It's a chilly start, of course, from the clear skies overnight, and there is a patchy frost in places. And there are some showers dotted about, mainly around coastal counties and around central and southwestern parts of Scotland. Then as we go into this afternoon, cloud amounts will increase, and with that, showers will become more widespread. And winds are light again, so those showers could be quite slow-moving, maybe even heavy and thundery in places with the risk of hail, maybe even wintry across the high ground of the north. And temperatures disappointing for the time of year, a little below average, although a degree or so higher than they were yesterday. Tonight, the showers will fade away, returning again once again for tomorrow.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Still to come, we'll be taking a look at what's making the front pages of the newspapers with the author and broadcaster, Afi O'Dom, and the editor of Challenges Northern Ireland, Thomas Copeland. Do stay with us.
We lost our son in 2016, not long after he was born. He was 3 days old. And we then went on to face secondary infertility and losses and IVF treatment along the way. Facing infertility for anyone is incredibly difficult, but I felt that fertility struggles after the death of a child just felt impossibly cruel. And yeah, it went on for quite a few years, and it was quite a tough thing to go through. Firstly, it's hugely cathartic for me. Writing over the past almost 5 years since our son Teddy died has been a massive therapy for me. But when I started writing after he died, it was really a case of looking for other women, looking for other parents who had been through similar. And once I started connecting with other people, I realised that there's such a power in community, and actually to continue these conversations and raise our own voices, but help to raise other people's voices, just enables everyone to feel more comfortable when we're talking about loss or fertility struggles or, IVF treatment. It just really helps to sort of continue that momentum. I mean, I believe that online there is a huge community of women and men talking about their experiences of going through fertility treatment. And, statistics show that 1 in 6 couples in the UK will struggle to fall pregnant naturally without some kind of assisted fertility, meaning that 2% of babies born every year in the UK are born through assisted fertility and IVF. And that's a huge amount of people. That's like 20,000 babies born every year. And it's a conversation I think we could all be better at having, because even if we aren't going through it ourselves, we might know somebody who we work with or somebody who lives on the same street as us. And it's really nice to be able to know the right thing to say to sort of support somebody if they do choose to tell you what they're going through.
I'm Tom Cheshire and I'm Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Beijing.
This police officer was shot through the calf.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
Hello, my name is Ina Braverman and I'm the founder and CEO of EcoWave Power. I believe that wave power, which can produce twice the amount of electricity that the world produces now, is definitely a great cause.
Did you know pollen levels tend to be higher in the morning and at night? The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
Today there will be some bright or sunny spells, but also fairly widespread showers. Some of them will be heavy with hail and thunder and even wintry over the high ground of the north. So let's take a look at the pollen forecast for today. Moderate levels are expected pretty much everywhere. Currently, tree pollen is in peak season with birch and ash airborne in any sunny spells, and spores will increase temporarily after any showers today too.
The Pollen Reports, sponsored by Philips Connected Air Purifiers.
Back with us now to take us through the newspapers, author and broadcaster Afia Dom and the editor of Challenges Northern Ireland, Thomas Copeland. Welcome back to both of you. Let's start with the eye, first of all, Afia. And this story, Barclays is predicting the biggest economic boom in 70 years.
Yes, that's right. So Barclays are predicting that the economy is going to grow by 6.5% this year, which would be the strongest growth in the British economy since 1948. And of course, I'm sure that's going to draw some post-war comparisons there. And we've heard a lot about what people are calling revenge spending. So people having saved up money over the lockdown period and are now going out to spend that money, whether it's on consumer items, electricals, luxury goods, or if they've saved enough perhaps to get on the property ladder. But now we have to realise that there is a flip side to this. Although some people have managed to build up their savings during lockdown, there are lots of people who burned through their savings, perhaps if they lost their job, if they were furloughed. Now, the furlough scheme and the uplift in universal credit is ending in September. And so there will be a lot of people who are going to be struggling after this period of time. And of course, there's going to be a lot of businesses that are potentially going to go bust and aren't going to be viable anymore. The red flag alert showed that 723,000 businesses are now in significant financial distress. That's up 15% from the fourth quarter, in 2020. So yes, although we are going to see this boom in the economy, I think we do have to realise that on the other side, there are lots of people who are struggling and who are going to continue to struggle. And lots of those people tend to be from demographics, like from ethnic minorities that potentially live in poorer areas of the country as well. So whilst we are expecting bumper growth of over 6%, we do have to have some plans in place to look after those people who may potentially fall through the cracks.
Indeed. Thomas, take us to the Times and to politics. The local elections afoot, and this article suggesting that Labour might not do as well as they hope to.
Yeah, nothing particularly new there. The Times have a double-page spread here looking at ahead to the May the 6th elections, principally council elections, but also a few variety of other mayoral and by-elections in there as well. This article is all about the red wall. There it says red wall blues. There's a load of great stats in here. Very quick summary. I won't bore you. It says Labour is to lose dozens of its council seats, Tories to increase their red wall seats by up to a third, and also Labour strategists suggesting that they will lose Hartlepool. So that's that by-election that's taking place, a real Brexit-supporting seat, but a Labour seat since its creation. And that going to the Tories, 11 years into Tory premiership in 10 Downing Street will be a really significant moment. As a matter of fact, in the entirety of British parliamentary history, not to mention now. Question is, why? One of the stats that you read in this article is that 54% of the red wall constituents who were surveyed by the Times say that Labour just doesn't understand them. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that Keir Starmer has failed to improve the alienation that was so clear between those red wall Labour heartland seats and the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn. Now, of course, that alienation had been building for a long of time. It wasn't just under Jeremy Corbyn, but Keir Starmer was really elected as that kind of figure who would try to improve those kind of relationships, reclaim these seats. And it's clear from the polling that we're seeing that isn't happening. I mean, if you look back at the general election 2019, there were two big things that everybody pretty much agreed was the reason that so many of those northern seats went blue. One was Corbyn and the other was Brexit. Keir Starmer, of course, was that kind of icon for a second referendum. According to Labour strategists quoted in this piece, his association with Brexit is so strong that it's becoming difficult to overcome that in some of those seats. Let me give me a quote from the article. One red wall Tory, so a Conservative in one of these seats, says, quote, "There's concern among colleagues that if we win Hartlepool, so if the Conservatives win Hartlepool, Starmer might quit. And that would be a shame for us." So that's from the Conservatives. That tells you, the strength of feeling that is clearly on display here, and the confidence that the Tories have that under Keir Starmer, their fortunes aren't going to improve drastically in the north.
Indeed. To the Mirror. I've only got the front page here, but I think that this story is suggesting and reporting that Britney Spears has dementia, has been diagnosed with dementia. Is that right?
Well, yes. So this is a story that's arisen from a BBC documentary, which is coming out at the beginning of next week. It seems like you asked for one Britney Spears documentary and 4 came along at once. And this is all about Britney Spears, her father, and her conservatorship, which has long been discussed. So this BBC documentary is on the iPlayer at the moment. It's out next week, and it's called The Battle for Britney, Fans, Cash and a Conservatorship. And it's saying in this documentary that one of the reasons why Britney Spears' father requested this conservatorship is that she has dementia. Apparently, there was some paperwork that had to be filled in, and one of the tick boxes he picked was relating to her and said that she had dementia placement or treatment. And it's thought that perhaps is the reason why she's under conservatorship from her father. And that, of course, simply means that her father has control of her finances. And during the time she's been under this conservatorship, she's released 4 albums and gone on 4 global tours. So, of course, she has earned quite a lot of money in that time. Now, she's going to speak about her conservatorship in court for the first time. She doesn't talk about it. So she's going to be in court on the 23rd of June to contest it, saying that she wants her lawyer to continue the conservatorship if she has to have it, if she cannot have control of her own finances. But this has long been discussed. The Free Britney campaign are always, gunning for her, always have her back, saying that in some way she's being controlled by her father, potentially her mother as well, in a battle to keep her finances under control and perhaps reap the rewards of all the hard work that she's doing. So yes, this documentary is on Wednesday, BBC 2, 9 p.m. Britney Spears and her conservatorship, a long discussed topic, certainly.
Thomas, many people's attentions are turning to summer holidays, possibility of whether we'll be able to travel. The Express saying that the Prime Minister will unveil the green list of countries next week, finally.
That's right. The Express is very excited this morning with this. Here we go. They say Boris to reveal a holiday list. The government looks set to announce this sort of green list, approved countries for holidaying. I kind of had 2 reactions to this. My initial reaction to the story was fairly negative. I was instantly thinking, the COVID waves that we're seeing in France and Germany, across Europe, not to mention further afield places like India. And importing any of the variants that are on display across the world in the UK could be a really critical way to undermine our vaccine rollout. And can you imagine if we had a large spread of a variant in the UK that was somehow even sort of 10% more immune to the vaccines than the current COVID cases that we have in the UK? That would be detrimental. And I don't think anybody wants to see us go back over the last number of months and try to revaccinate huge swathes of the population. But then, and those risks definitely still remain. But the other way of looking at it is, of course, that over the course of this lockdown, I mean, I'm in Northern Ireland. I'm very lucky. We have a very low population density, some lovely countryside very nearby to sort of any of the major metropolitan areas. But in huge parts of the UK, in cities, you've got families and flats who've been packed in there for months at a time. They've been homeschooling their children. They've perhaps got multiple generations all in the same house. It is entirely reasonable that we say to people in those kind of situations, let's try to release some of that tension. Let's try to figure out ways that we can get you away, get you out on holiday, at least of all because that's fantastic for the tourism industry. And airlines are on their knees. Not that I have a huge amount of sympathy for airlines at the best of times. Still, I think a lot of people might read this and say, oh, I'm just unsure, a bit too early. Perhaps there's a middle ground here, maybe a few staycations across the UK, support some of the dying businesses in our seaside resorts.
That definitely has been suggested, yes. Afa, take us into this story in The Independent. It's the online version of the story. Quite distressing, about a police officer suspended over allegations of hitting a disabled girl 30 times, it says, with a baton.
Yes, very distressing story, actually. So this is a young girl, 17 years old, a vulnerable girl who's disabled. She was on a group walk and she became distressed. So she came in contact with police officers, got into a police car. She flagged it down, got into a police car, then got out. And then this is when the altercation occurred, when a police officer hit her more than 30 times with a baton and also tasered her as well. And as I said, this is a young girl who was disabled, who was vulnerable, and the police officers took no time to communicate with her. It was said there was a complete lack of communication, a breakdown in communication, it seems to me.
The officer...
and instead, unreasonable force was used.
Yeah,
in this
officer
case.
Suspended over those allegations, and that obviously will be investigated. Afia and Thomas, thank you very much for taking us through the papers this hour. We shall see you in about 60 minutes' time.